As a child, I remember seeing An Early Frost. I think that's the one that I recall, the one movie that dealt with AIDS. I remember Aidan Quinn was very handsome, and it was a very moving performance. It was touching. He was very sweet. And so it was very sad to watch him kind of go through that. HIV and AIDS was this kind of faraway thing, but looming still, especially as you're sitting there thinking, okay, I'm gay, and so is this going to be my fate? As I grew older, it was, into my late teens and then 20s. It was like AIDS and HIV just sort of was creeping closer and closer towards something like it was a celebrity, and then it was friends of friends of friends, to the point where a friend of one of my best friends in high school who had gone to college in Mississippi, where he had met a bunch of people, and I'd gotten to know some of those people when I would hang out with them, um, got sick and was in the hospital and eventually died. When I made my first film, Punks, which premiered at Sundance 20 years ago this year, um, it was important to me to have a character in there who was gay and just living with HIV and AIDS, because I had a roommate at the time who was HIV positive and was, looked amazing, was always hooking up with guys and living his life. And I was like, where is that character on TV? At that point, every time AIDS was portrayed on television, it was doom and gloom, death and destruction. And I saw people around me just thriving and living very, very regular lives. I think it was 2004, July 4th weekend, which used to be, I think it still is, Black Gay Pride weekend in LA. And I remember going to the kickoff party. It was at the El Rey Theater, and a Friday night. And I remember going in and kind of standing in the entryway and looking out at the sort of sea of people and trying to find my friends. And suddenly I was struck with the notion, here's a sort of viable economic group. A lot of these people are coming in from out of town, all over the country. They're renting cars and hotel rooms and booking flights and entertainment and stuff. No one's really making entertainment aimed at this group. And so it just hit me, boom, I'm going to do a TV show. It's going to be like Sex in the City, but with 4 black gay guys. And it's going to be set in LA, and that's what I'm going to do. And Monday I put casting notices in backstage. I hadn't written a thing. I think my title for the show at the time was Hot Chocolate, which would eventually become Noah's Ark. When I was conceiving Noah's Ark, I knew, of course, I wanted to deal with HIV again, but I didn't necessarily want to do the same thing I'd done in Punks and have one of the characters be positive. I wanted to go a bit broader. And at the time, I had been working with a new organization, the Black AIDS Institute, that was started by Phil Wilson. And so I was inspired by Phil and the organization and my experiences working with them, because they really reached out to very different communities to try to engage us in how we could be a part of the fight against AIDS in the Black community, which of course it was ravaging the community. So I created a character kind of loosely based on the work that Phil was doing, who was working in the field, starting his organization, and working in HIV and AIDS prevention and treatment. And so, but that way we were able to sort of show him opening this clinic and dealing with doctors and testing people. We had a guest star. We had an episode where this sort of young black teen heartthrob from this boy band B2K, Raz B was his name. He appeared on the show as a young man going into the clinic, getting a positive test result, and then getting counseled. And then I had a supporting character played, of course, by my longtime friend and the amazing Wilson Cruz. And that character was HIV positive and was a love interest of one of the other characters. And we got to show how Ricky was struggling with this idea of dating someone HIV positive. And Ricky was the one character on the show who was the promiscuous one, the sort of sexually free one who flaunted it and didn't care. And so I remember there was a conversation between Noah and Ricky because Ricky gets sick and he's convinced he's positive. And he has a conversation with Noah about dating Janito at some point, Wilson's character. And Noah tells him, well, you know, again, this is the influence of the Black AIDS Institute and Phil Wilson. Those statistics, which were, 40% of black gay men are believed to be HIV positive. So he says the quote, the stat. So you must have, at some point, you have come in contact with someone. Um, you know, and Ricky says what is surprisingly realistic with a lot of young black gay men, or at least it used to be. He says, "Well, I just assumed I would get it one day anyway; that it was inevitable." I thought again, these are important things to say. These are important things for black gay men to hear as they're processing how they're going to deal with this disease, which has infected a large number of black gay men. It's important to remember this long journey that we've been through with HIV and AIDS because it's still around. It's nice to think that it's not a problem anymore, but in the black gay community, it's still there in a big way. And what's really sad to me is seeing a lot of young black gay men HIV positive in their 20s and stuff like that. It's like, so there's still work to be done, because now that there's treatment, it's not as scary, obviously, but I think there are still a lot of young black gay men who think, almost think about HIV as an inevitability. And it's sort of like young black men who grew up in the worst parts of, the inner cities used to say they expect to die at some point, through gunfire or whatever. They expect not to live to see 21. And so there's still work to be done. So it's important to talk about these things so that it's out there and people remember it. But also the young kids really need to know about these things because it's still affecting them.